Hi, this video is to discuss the events that led to the death of Kendrick Johnson, and to hopefully be able to put to rest some of the rumors that are involved on social media, that are in the mainstream media as far as newspaper articles, news reports. A lot of things here have been misconstrued. And I feel like, that if you search YouTube, there's tons of videos for how Kendrick died, what is plausible, what isn't plausible, and they're all pointing toward him being murdered, with the exception of just a few. And I just want to put some of that to rest. I will state for the record that I have viewed the case file. I have viewed the hundreds of statements from everything from kids at the school that were classmates to anybody that was involved. I've seen the entire case file in its entirety. I've gone through it with a fine-tooth comb to try to look and see which direction this really needed to go. Was he really murdered? I'll tell you, 2 years ago when this first happened, I did live in Valdosta, Georgia, and immediately my first thought was something else happened to this child. He didn't just crawl into this mat for a pair of shoes and die. It just seemed like too much of a freak accident. There were automatically fingers pointed. I think that racial biasness has come forward. I think there's been some race baiting in this. Once the case was closed and I was able to view the autopsy pictures, the statements, the tons of mounting evidence as to what happened to him, I now understand completely what happened. And I just like to state for the record too that, and you can look this up, many people die every year of positional asphyxiation. I'll give you a case in point. You may be able to research this in the media. It was within the past month or two, and I believe it was in the state of either Wyoming or Montana, that a young child, I think he was about 2, had climbed up onto his kitchen counter. The kitchen counter was between the refrigerator. And, oftentimes if you look at your refrigerator in your kitchen, there's, maybe a 5-6 inch gap in between the countertop and the refrigerator itself. He was reaching for a box of cereal or a snack of some sort on top of the refrigerator. He fell into that crack between the fridge and the countertop, and he became wedged. His mother didn't know. He obviously couldn't scream. She was in the house, and he died within just a short time of positional asphyxiation. It was the exact same cause of death. It was a freak accident. There was no manhunt or, they did not blame the mother. It was just a freak accident. He tried to climb up there and got wedged in between, and he couldn't get out and he couldn't scream. And when you're upside down for that long of a period of time, the blood rushes to your head and, you eventually pass out. That being said, it's not as uncommon as the internet rumors would like to make it out to be, that positional asphyxiation happens, or asphyxiation or lack of oxygen in general happens in the mining industry, in the industry of factory workers and people in steel mills and things like that. These accidents happen all the time. They're rarely ever reported because these people are grown and they understand the risks, but they still happen. This event, while tragic, was not murder. It was not, there was nothing that was done to this young man outside of a freak accident of him attempting to get a pair of shoes out of a gym mat. And I'll go into some of that too. I want to talk about Brian and Brandon Bell. They have been named as targets, and I'll say that with quotes, targets by the DOJ Michael Moore for the state of Georgia. They've been issued target letters. Their names have come up ever since they refused to answer questions. I just finished watching the video. It's 3 hours long of the Johnson family and the trial that took place when they blocked the entrance to the courthouse several months ago. And, you know, in that there were a lot of things that were said that were followed up with cross-examine, but the Attorney King for the Johnson family stated lots of different things that were simply untrue, that were not anywhere in the evidence, that were not provable or plausible to have happened. One of those being Brian and Brandon Bell. Their father is an FBI agent. I want to say for the record first, I don't know them. I have no affiliation with them. I've never met any one of them. But I am smart enough to have read this case file and been able to go from point A to point B. So Brian has been the main one that's been accused of killing KJ or something of that line. The biggest piece that comes into play here is the altercation that they got in a year or so before KJ passed away that was on a school bus heading for a football game. I want to talk about that for just a minute, if you will. First of all, Brian and Kendrick were friends. They had been in football together and they had gone to school together for quite some time. Will I say that they were best friends? No. But I will say that there is record of testimony or media accounts that KJ had spent the night at the Bell's house. So they were obviously close enough friends to have that kind of relationship outside of the football field, outside of the classroom. There was some rousing between the two of them, perhaps some "ya mama" jokes. We don't know exactly. On the school bus heading for the game, there was some picking back and forth, and Brian stood up, went to punch KJ because he thought he was the one doing it, and apparently it turned out that he wasn't. It was the person next to him or something to that effect. The punch landed empty. He didn't make contact, and KJ tried to return, and from what I understand, that punch also came up empty. And both the boys were punished. They weren't able to play that evening because Brian and Brandon were both on the football team. The Bells were present at the football team, even though it was an away game. And so the coach had said that part of his rules are you fight on the bus, you don't ride the bus home. And so Brian went home with his family, and KJ didn't have anyone there at the game, so he rode home with the student resource officer, I believe was the title of that person, which is a police car. But there's also testimony that states that he was kind of excited about that, to like ride in the front of the police car. You know, he wasn't upset about it. He may have been, I can't speak for him, but he may have been upset at the situation, or that he didn't get to play or whatever. But after this altercation between the two of them, they were both suspended because Jackie Johnson was upset over the altercation, and they weren't going to punish either of the boys, but after she pushed and pushed, they ended up suspending both of them. And after that, the boys made up. They were no longer at each other's throats. They, you know, didn't have any ill will towards one another, if you will. And keep in mind, this was over a year prior to KJ passing away. Whereas the rumor states that, or one of them that I've heard states that it had something, you know, that there was unfinished business, so to speak, between that altercation, and Brian wanted vengeance for that, to the point that his father had, Rick Bell, had urged them to hurt KJ in some way. All of that is rumors. It's all speculation. There's nothing that we've been able to find through the investigation that puts any of that into perspective that's plausible or that actually happened. To my knowledge, and I've been involved with this for over a year now, there is no evidence to that. There's no evidence that Brian wanted any kind of retribution for the